This is Katie Walker from Rethink with Revitalist, and today we're talking about how we're changing the narrative for mental health. So, I have two amazing ketamine business people, I will say, that function in Florida, Charles and his wife, Christina. And we're here today to talk about, gosh, all kinds of different things, right? From the providers to the business, here in this space, how it's evolving. So, Charles, Christina, thank you so much for both being here. You want to give the crew a little bit of a background on you guys? Christina, would you
Yeah,
like to start
of
first?
course. We started Myself Wellness in 2020, just 2 weeks after the lockdown.
Mm.
Yeah, and since then, we've done about 12,000 plus ketamine treatments, helped hundreds of people in our local community, and we just keep staying positive and pushing through every day to just help as many people as possible and bring awareness to this life-saving therapy.
Yeah, so we're very mission driven. I went through a lot of struggles of my own over the years with mental health and substance abuse problems. And it was through the use of psychedelic medicines therapeutically, I alleviated all of that out of my life. So, like Christina was saying, it was actually like, pre lockdown where we were coming up with this idea. And I quit my jobs when our son was 6 months old after I sat down with Christina and said, listen, if I went through 20 years worth of misery and don't use what helped me to help other people, it seems like a waste of 20 years of my life. And so she was very apprehensive, but very supportive. And so I quit my jobs. We took the leap of faith and we were going to start a clinic where we were just going to do, yoga and meditation classes and all of these other mindfulness and healthy lifestyle practices that we could bring people's awareness about. And we wanted to get into, ketamine therapy one day. It was our goal. And it was kind of amazing because after we took the leap of faith, it was very synchronistic, where it was almost like the universe waved a magic wand and all of the right people and all of the right things started appearing at the right time. That being said, we did our first ketamine treatment from our facility, and then a week later the lockdown ended up happening. So I said to, the team, I'm like, listen, this is just a test. Like, stay positive, let's just keep moving forward, putting people, helping people first, and the laws of attraction will be at play. And I believe that everything will work out. And now fast forward to where we're at, it's about 5 years later. And like Christina said, we've done thousands and thousands of treatments and helped tons of people get off of their pharmaceutical medications and substance abuse problems and things like that.
So, a quick clip for this, um, for all the providers that are out there that reach out and say, hey, I want to start a ketamine clinic.
Mhm.
Knowing the pros, the cons, the bads, the uglies, everything that we can talk about through this podcast. What would you say, like, to a provider looking to get in this space? Is it worth it?
I will tell you this, and I'm being completely honest when I say this. If I wasn't mission driven, if this wasn't like what my purpose is to be of service and help people, it would have probably not been something that we would have ended up sticking with.
Mhm.
This is the hardest industry to get into. You're breaking taboos and stigmas. You're fighting against big pharma. You can't even get your ads out on social media properly sometimes. And then you have, the taboos and stigmas that are associated with ketamine being a party drug and a horse tranquilizer. And just like, this isn't like a industry you can just jump into and the ball's like rolling in the right direction. This is an industry that you're getting into where you have to go in and fight for everything. And so it's been easy would never be like it is probably one of the hardest things that I could say I've ever done in my life.
Yeah, if you
And
don't have the right intention, then you're not gonna succeed because you just have to keep pushing through and keep
mhm.
breaking those boundaries and barriers.
And the value in your purpose-driven life now, has it evolved since you opened ketamine? Even understanding all the negatives.
Like because this is what I wanted to do because I wanted to help people. In that aspect, it's the most rewarding job I could ever imagine having. Like, I think that if you're coming into this industry and you're like, hey, I'm gonna go and be a part of this great, industry and we're gonna make tons of money immediately and like all this stuff like that, it's like that's actually not where the value comes from. And that's not the case at all. The things that makes us happiest and being like being happy with what we do is that we get to help so many people. And so like if that's where your value lies, well then it's a great industry to be in. But at the same time, though, I mean, you have to be working with the right team and the right staff of people, that everybody has the right intentions, because like if you're not, then it's almost impossible.
Yeah. To keep getting back up. It's not
Yeah.
easy.
The thing I've learned about entrepreneurship in this industry, starting the company that when we did, is that I honestly I've never had my butt kicked as hard in business than I've had in the last 5 years in my entire life. And it was so brutal that like but every time we'd get knocked down, we pick ourselves back up, we brush off, we learn what we needed to from the situation. But like I said, like the amount that we got beat up, if we weren't mission driven, I don't know if that would have been a feasible thing to do.
And you're right. And I mean, a lot of people, it's hard. I mean, it's so hard. Like I told somebody the other day when I was going through like my hardest times with my company, I never felt like so close to death.
I get that.
Yeah, it was just a weird feeling, right? Like, and it was like truly living in the moment. Like I didn't know if I had enough money, right, to like fill up my car with gas for the day.
Yeah.
And then I looked back, and one of my girls was talking the other day because one of my degrees is in anesthesia. They're making like $300 an hour right now. It's stupid. And I see, I see anesthesia providers going back and forth. What's your value? What's your value? What's your value? And they keep trying to increase their pay, hour over hour, basically. Their value is the skill set that they have that can save the lives of literally every person in this world. And they're not looking at it that way. And, so now I make, who knows, $2 an hour, since I enjoy working 100-hour weeks. But it's worth it. And the thing about it, especially with investors, right? Because I deal with those too, quite a bit. They're not able to see the financial impact that this is going to have. And I tell them all the time. And I've renamed some investors Marshmallow Boys. I think it's appropriate. If you know the Marshmallow study. Do you know that? You don't know the Marshmallow study?
No, tell me.
Okay. I'm going to get t-shirts that say Marshmallow Boys on it. I could say girls too, I guess. But yeah, so the Marshmallow study is I'm going to give you a marshmallow, and I'll give you $1. If you eat it now, I'll give you $1.
Yeah. And if you don't eat it, then I'll give you 2.
That's right. Yeah. Right. And if you don't eat it for 5 minutes,
yeah,
I'll give you more money. And they all ate it as soon as they got it. Right. Yeah. And that's what we're dealing with. And I don't know if you all know the we'll call it trauma. It's probably significant trauma that I'll have to do psychedelics on in the future with this whole business. But what happened to me a little bit, I'm not really talked about it too much. I try to keep my mouth mostly closed about this, but it's a good time to talk about it. So I started my clinic all by myself with a partner, and we didn't have any external funding come in. And in 2020, I had some VC guys come in and say, "Hey, you want to go public?" I'm like, what does that mean? Right? I didn't even own stock. What does that mean to go public? And, they sold me when they said, you can get your message out bigger. And I was like, well, I believe in ketamine. Of course I want to get the message out with this, right? All right, let's do it. So in 2020, we started the process going public, ended up going public August the 24th, 2021. And I'm the CEO, right, of the public company. My company did amazing, right, for the first August, September through November. And then in November, took a big dive. And, everyone can put whatever thoughts or opinions they want to put in that big dive. But the company was growing, statistically, she was growing on the path of projection that we expected. And then all of a sudden, my valuation was like 67 million, and it went down to about 20 million, basically in 24 hours. And nothing had changed. And I didn't really understand, a lot that was going on at the time. The next week, I actually had meetings. They tried to then sell my company to some other ketamine clinics at that time. And again, I didn't understand any of this going on. And it wasn't until early 2022 that I started seeing what was happening. And I absorb a lot because I eat so much crow anyway in life. I try to absorb as much as I can. But in early 2022. And this is when I had to stand up pretty strong. Probably people have seen my personality when I have to stand up. But the decision was they wanted me to stop getting supplies for treatments and to put all my money into marketing. And I'm like, how does that work for revenue at all, right? Because the treatments are bringing in revenue. No, this is what you're going to do. And I was like, no, it's not. And so I ended up, kind of becoming a bull a little bit, and ended up in August of 2022 extinguishing all the contracts of the people that basically took me public. The VC guys, IR guys, chief of marketing, VP of finance, the board. They all knew each other from previous stints. And unfortunately, that's what happened with a lot of these public companies is they didn't have the stubbornness, I guess, to do that. So talking about getting your ass kicked by the universe. I talked about this the other day when I was on in British Virgin Islands. The 1 week where I got my tail kicked, and I think the universe does this on purpose. That's what I tell myself to keep my optimism. And so it was the week that my daughter started 7th grade. On Monday was her first day of school. On Tuesday, my mom died. So we're sitting there with my mom, and it was my mom had a lot of probably trauma from losing my brother when I was younger. And she died at 70, but she was very, very strong, just kind of had some Parkinsonian symptoms and went down pretty fast. But anyway, sitting there with her, waiting for the funeral home to come and things. And then I take my daughter to go get food at like 2 p.m. Literally, we're driving to go get food 10 minutes away. On the way back, this guy slams into the back of my car. I had a hitch on the back, fortunately, which saved saved us, but it completely totaled his car. My back wouldn't even go down. And I came out and I was just like, dude. And he was like, I'm so sorry. I was like, my mom died like 2 hours ago. Right. And then he hits me in the back. I'm like, all right. Well, then Wednesday, that was Tuesday. Wednesday, I go to court because my daughter's father used to work for Blackwater. And I always say, with those guys, you want them on your side. You don't want them against you. And he's kind of looked at me as a target since she was 1. She's now 14. And so I've learned to deal with like difficult personalities. So on Wednesday, he takes me to court for criminal charges for an email, for 77 emails, actually. So from 2013, he kept emails from me from 2013 until 2022, 77 emails. And if I said yes, no, okay, it's exactly what the child psychologist told me to do. If I said yes, no, okay, or I'm sorry, you're frustrated, he wanted me to go to jail for 10 days because I wasn't effectively communicating and it was putting his daughter at risk. So that was Wednesday. Thursday was my mother's funeral. Friday was my mother's gravesite, and I had to leave pretty much. The family was doing all kinds of lunch stuff. I stayed as long as I could, but I had to leave to go meet that Friday afternoon with the lawyers when I was finalizing everyone's extinguished contracts that day. So That's
a shit week.
It was a really big week.
Wow.
I was like, is this real? But yeah, I mean, talk about getting your ass handed to you. But anyway, so I've learned a lot from that business piece. And, we can talk about psychedelics and why I'm so mission oriented now, because I was in August of 2022. My husband, amazing man, about 3 weeks later told me I needed to decide him or the company. And he wanted me to go back to do anesthesia in the hospital. So we got divorced. And so that was 3 weeks after mom had died, after that whole week, right? It was just, everything was imploding, And then in October of 2022 was when I did my first retreat, my first psilocybin experience. And that was when literally I talked to God for about 4 hours and was kind of told, that the reason all this happened is because it's, it's time to go. It's time to run. And there's, I'm supposed to be executing this mission. And God made very, very apparent. I mean, it was in my session. God said, because I was whining, right? If you look at the Bible and it says you're crying out to God, like literally I was crying. And I said fuck to God about 60 times. And it was very, open, unopinionated. But God was very sure to say, do you think this is your mission or do you think this is my mission? And I heard that very clearly. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. All right, I'll just keep showing up. So it's one of those things, like when you're getting your tail kicked with all of this, it's a mission and you're not leading it. You're serving it.
I just had a mushroom experience last week. And I talked to God as well. And I was told that we're on a divine mission and that we're here to help orchestrate all of it. So it was a very similar experience.
Yeah. With let me say, first of all, that, wow, you're a warrior.
Yeah.
You are a warrior. Okay. And I go back to the saying where it's like God gives its toughest struggles or toughest wars to its strongest warriors. And like, so like what you are going to have the ability to accomplish because of making it through that with your head above water is like going to be incredible. That being said, when you were telling your story about how like when you had the mushroom experience and you were talking to God and that you were told this, I got chills all over my body, which I take as a wink from the divine or a direct message.
I do too.
And I get that when I'm talking to people that I'm supposed to do good things with. The reason that we took the leap of faith to start the company is because I smoked DMT and I had a otherworldly experience where I was told that I was supposed to quit my jobs and take a leap of faith and start this company. And it wasn't really a leap of faith because I was in divine synchronicity with the universe and that I wasn't in control and that we were on this mission and that we were going to help heal the world. Okay. And so, you know, there were otherworldly beings there and it was a very profound and beautiful experience. But to have that experience and go upstairs and tell your loved one, so hey, listen, you know,
I wasn't there yet. I hadn't even tried psychedelics at that point.
I just smoked DMT and you know, basically just got told that I'm supposed to quit my jobs and we're gonna take a leap of faith and we're gonna heal the world together with psychedelics. And she's just like, we have a baby. like
Bring the papers, divorce papers. Here we go.
She's probably like, I just had a kid with a crazy person, you know? And the thing is that though, like, but like, that wasn't the first time I had that message, you know, like 10 years ago when I was in the middle of a full blown drug addiction, I had my first breakthrough out of body experience where I received divine guidance that I was supposed to quit taking drugs and I was supposed to get my life together because I was going to help people heal. And it didn't happen after that night. Jesus was there and I was telepathically communicated to. And like, it was a very confusing thing for me because that was not my life's path that I was on. And so I didn't have anybody to integrate it with properly. And so like, you know, I started researching like, you know, ketamine like experiences and because I had mixed a dissociative with MDMA that night. And so I'm like, you know, like ET, Jesus, ketamine, and then on Google, the spirit molecule pops up and DMT and Rick Strassman. So I start watching the spirit molecule over and over again, trying to figure out what happened to me. And then I found out that other people had had very similar experiences to the one that I had. And it all led back to DMT. So then 6 months later, I got a hold of some DMT and I started having those kind of experiences. And it was a very repetitious message. It took me years to end up getting myself together. But then when I was really ready to change my life, because I had got hooked on opiates very severely and I was strung out on heroin and I knew about my DMT experiences and what they had done for me. And so I was like, I need to get a hold of some DMT because I know it's going to help me and it'll help me quit doing this. And so I smoked DMT with the intention of quitting using heroin. I went to an alternate universe where there was a bunch of beings and they were cheering and chanting for me. And they were like, it's not too late. You can do it. And they were like, there was thousands of them cheering for me. And I came out of that experience. I got myself some Suboxone, an ounce of cannabis. I locked myself in a bedroom for a week and I detoxed myself and I quit using heroin after that experience. You know, I was still drinking and I was still self-medicating with cocaine throughout the years after that. And then it finally hit the point where I'm like, why am I doing this? Why do I keep on doing these things? And so I took a 6-gram mushroom trip. I took 6 grams of penis envy and pitch black silence. I pulled a Terrence McKenna plus 1 gram to make sure that I did it properly. And, you know, I've always been an overachiever. And so I started meditating under my comforter in my bedroom where I left my body and went out into the middle of the universe where I became one with everyone and everything. And then I became one with God and realized that we were all a part of it, that this was a manifestation of the collective mind and that I was nothing separate from it. And so then after that experience, I came back down into my body and I realized that every time that I was taking drugs and alcohol, I was literally poisoning God. And so it was eye-opening experience where there was a lot of crying and apologizing, to the collective, the universe, but mostly to myself for abusing myself like that for so many years. And it wasn't just like opiates and coke and like I used to be addicted to food. I weighed 100 more pounds than I do at one time. I was addicted to sex and scratch off tickets, just anything to take me outside of myself. And the truth is because it's like I couldn't stand myself. I had a crippling fear of death from when my dad died when I was a kid. So I was living in a constant state of fear. I was overweight, unhealthy. I hated myself. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror most of the time. And then all of a sudden, I realized that I didn't have to hate myself anymore and that I actually loved myself for the first time in my entire life. And I tell people that's really what psychedelics did for me, is that psychedelic medicines gave me the ability to love myself enough to actually respect myself enough to want to change my life, to think I was worthy of having a positive or a good, healthy life. And so after that, I started going to the gym. I started meditating. I started hitting the sauna and eating incredibly healthy, doing breath work and all of these other healthy lifestyle practices, treating myself as the extension of the divine that I truly was. And so it's like psychedelic medicines was a complete it was a psychic change from living in a constant state of fear and shifting that to a place of love. And so like that's what this movement about is for me, is like moving from fear to love and transforming humanity to a higher state of consciousness where there's like out of this hierarchical system and it's more of a level playing field. And this is kind of what we briefly spoke about before the podcast, was that, bringing everybody together, bringing everybody that's on that higher vibrational frequency of love and gratitude and doing positive things for humanity together and really making a shift in the world that is necessary and needs to happen.
Yeah. And talking about love for yourself and the divine. And I think this is a good segue. People who get into the psychedelic space, right? Because as you all know, it's servant leadership. You show up first, you go home last. You're the one who you just execute, right? It's tasks. You're not leading because people need to hear you speak. You're leading because you're doing what needs to get done. And there's a very, very big difference. So, talking about you loving yourself and doing it's like you saw, that you were part of a higher power, not that you are the higher power. And I get so many people, and it creates a lot of confusion for people. And I'm still trying to differentiate, the terminology with it. But, when people are like, you're part of, right? Like God lives all within us versus we are all God. And I've heard that. And it's like, it creates a lot of confusion, especially for people who are spiritual or religious or agnostic, whoever, right? People who believe that there's a higher power, or if they don't believe there's a higher power and they do psychedelics and they're like, okay, there's a higher power. There's something bigger than me out there. That's something, when people, because me personally, like I'm a servant, right? Period. And I'm here to execute the mission and to try to keep everybody aligned. That's my personal opinion. But other people, it's like Jim Jones almost, that they're, you need to follow me. And what they're doing a lot of times is they're taking advantage of a vulnerable population that's looking for structure and guidance, and they're giving them that false narrative. And because, the higher power doesn't exist in any one person by any means. We're all these little tiny molecules, and I try to look at it from a physical, like physics per se, because where I have to communicate in the Western medicine world so much, it's like, how am I going to communicate this into the science/Western world? And the only thing I can think of is, there's a higher energy source, and we're all, if you're aligned, you feel that alignment with energy, which is all physical, physics energy. And we're all part of that. But what you said earlier, which I love this term, and I just heard it like 2 weeks ago and it clicked, is the spiritual narcissism.
Yeah.
Because we see people's egos, right? With psychedelics and ketamine, it dissolves your ego, period. And you all probably seen,
At the right dose.
at the right dose. Ego, yes. Ego deaths. That can happen sometimes, especially, it just happens in the right time, right environment, wrong environment, whatever, right? You can have ego deaths, but you do see those egos dissolve. And when those egos dissolve, there is a lack of the structure that you knew from the past, good, bad, or ugly. But the ego continues to redevelop. And that's what a lot of people, you'll hear in psychedelics, oh yeah, it dissolves your ego. And it does. But a lot of people recreate a new ego. And that new ego can be almost as damning than the old one was, but in a different manner. So like me personally, I don't know. I know a lot about psychopharmacology and pharmacology and things like that. But if I get into the Eastern side of medicine, I don't talk to anybody about my training because, Western medicine's bad. So it's like I'm bad or, so I just try to be more dressed like a hippie and just go to the conferences and don't say anything. But people will give each other the medicine and they take them to levels that this person's not ready for. And I think, talking what we spoke about earlier, when someone comes to me and say, Christine, if you came to me and you're like, okay, I'm struggling with depression. I'd be like, okay, what do you want? Like, what are you looking for? Right? Because I need to hear from you. What are you comfortable with? What's your cultural, what's your ethnicity? What are all these things that you're comfortable with? And then how can I best support that? Right? So I'm going to support you with my skill sets on the back end. Unfortunately, sometimes in psychedelics, people will come to you, hey, I'm having trouble with depression. Christina, I know exactly what you need. And no, that's not the way ketamine nor psychedelics nor Western medicine. We do that in Western medicine all the time too. We're telling them what they need. We don't know what they need. They need to tell us what they're looking for. And we utilize our skill sets as a secondary means of support. Not, it doesn't become this employee boss relationship, which is in Western medicine. I mean, as providers, we can fire patients all the time, and it's like you're their boss, it doesn't make any sense. I understand letting people go that, you're no longer serving or benefiting. But yeah, if you want to talk about that, to a point like the love piece, spiritual narcissism, it's like, how do we build a system to best help support the people, also bring in the best leaders? Because right now there's a lot of leaders that are in this space that do not need to be in this space, and they won't be forever because it will catch up to them eventually. And along the way, are they going to cause harm? Are they going to cause damage? Are they going to hurt the space overall? Probably, there's going to be, hurts to that. So those are things that I see, but nobody really has the structure made out yet on how do we stop it or how do we prevent it? How do we stop it? And then how do we progress in the direction that we want to go?
What people like, everybody that thinks it's the one man show that this needs, like, I'm the leader of this, like, listen, like, it goes back to what we were talking about. We're all the droplets of water in the ocean of consciousness. So like, we're all in this together. And I think that, like, this is what you were talking about with the spiritual narcissism, and that we talked about, is it's like you have this experience where you're connected to the creator, and like we're all like an extension of it or whatever. And then when people don't know how to integrate that properly, they come back out and they're like, this is the Jones drink the Kool-Aid thing. It's like, hey, I'm God and I know what's best for you now. And so like, you prey on people that are lost or that are looking for answers in their journey, and you come as this, this person with all of the answers that might not be leading people in the most genuine direction. When I got into this industry, and when we got into this industry, we thought that we were going to be coming into an industry full of people that all had the right intentions, and they had these beautiful experiences where we're supposed to, be helping humanity and doing all of this. And I found that it was less about helping people and more about people wanting to put a spotlight on themselves and acting like they were the Messiah or the great savior or the, the great whatever hope that was going to end.
Put profits in front of people too.
And that's another thing too. And so it's like, I do think you're right when, like, there has been a lot of it up to this point, but I also believe in, like, I trust God, I trust the universe. And I know that these lower vibrational frequencies that are like bringing this to the surface, I believe in the synchronistic flow of the evolution of consciousness where everything is being divinely orchestrated. Okay. And so that this is actually being brought to the surface so we learn from it and we learn what not to do. I feel like we're in this cycle in life of evolve or repeat. And so it's like we see these mistakes being made, and then people come in and they don't make the same mistakes again. That's what the industry needs, is that everybody needs to come together that has the right intentions, that are out to help people for the right reasons, And I think everybody needs to like, quit looking at it as a competition so much as like, this is really about helping people. And if you have those intentions, then, and you get with people that have those intentions, that's when magical things can happen.
And I think the people that don't have the right intentions are just going to kind of fall off, whether they fall off peacefully and it's not a fight, or it's going to fall off way more dramatically.
Well, it's like they vibrate out of the equation. It's
Yeah.
like they can't hold on to that genuine frequency. And listen, and this goes back to a lot of the VC money and stuff like that came into the equation. It's like, listen, like the psychedelic industry is not something that you're going to come in and people that are used to throwing money at something and they want to, they want a 10x and they want an instant ROI. And so it's like that is an unrealistic expectation in an industry that's in its pre-infancy. It's like none of the compounds are even legal yet. You know what I'm saying? It's like you want to throw money into this thing. And then I told people, like, even when you're investing in the companies that are, creating compounds and stuff like that, like there's so many people that are out there doing it. It's like throwing a dart at a dartboard and hoping that that company ends up taking something through, FDA approval first or whatever is going to end up happening. And, like one thing I do see about the industry, and this is what I did tell VC friends of mine and stuff like that is, and none of them wanted to listen, by the way, to me, in a way, like the safe bet right now is betting on a really genuine string of clinics. Like people that are serving the medicine in a brick and mortar, which is going to be necessary. And then you build an infrastructure and strength around that. And then you keep on helping people in the meantime. And then no matter who wins the race to bringing whatever to market first, you're going to need the brick and mortar clinics to end up serving the medicines to begin with. But see, that's the long play. Nobody wants to play the long play. And I think that, like, to be completely honest, the long play in this industry is what's going to end up filtering out a lot of the people that might not have genuine intentions. And then the people that do play the long game not only will end up making a tangible difference in this world and helping millions and millions of people, but then the ROI will be there in the end.
Yeah, 100%. But you're right, they can't see it.
No.
And I did have an investor. He's like, it's crappy when you're 10 years ahead. And it's lonely. Like nobody sees what you see. But then, I tell people it's like, ketamine, psychedelics, they're all the core, right? It's the key that's going to fix everything. But we've got to make sure the structure is around them, supporting them accordingly. But it's like pain, multi-trillion-dollar market. Mental health, multi-trillion-dollar market. Neurodegenerative health, multi-trillion-dollar market. I'm like, guys, psychedelics and ketamine are going to bring all these multi-trillion-dollar markets together.
Yeah.
And that they can't see that. They're not in it, from those different aspects. But it's hard. I thought, because the youngest we've treated is 12, the oldest is 92, and then we have veterans, like we have the VA contract and different things like that. And I don't know. I was so, matter of factly, like, yeah, I'm helping your kids not to kill themselves. I'm helping our veterans, right? Our largest population of our heroes, of our protectors, not to die from self-harm. And I just knew that all these investors would want to help with that. Why wouldn't they?
100%.
Right?
100%.
Give them $1, gone. Greed and egos.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
I'm like, listen, like I knew it was going to work because God told me it was going to work.
Mhm.
Okay. Like, and that's how, like I wasn't a believer. I was a knower. Like I had a burning bush experience and this was the message that I was told. And I am on a divine mission and I needed to follow this message. And I did. It was a blueprint. This goes back, and I say it all the time, but it goes back to the Alan Watts thing where it's like psychedelics are a telephone receiver. And you get these divine messages or you get this message. And the thing is that I didn't take the divine message like, wow, that was an amazing trip. I can't believe it. And then go back to my life. I'm like, I took the message and I'm like, this was a message from God and it's going to be a blueprint for my life now. And I'm going to go by it. And it's funny because like everything ended up working out just the way that God said it was going to work out. Like maybe not like the trials and tribulations and me getting my butt kicked, but then you have to go to like this level of stoicism where it's like, that wasn't God beating me up. That was God preparing me. You know what I'm saying? Molding me into the individual that I needed to be to actually really be of the highest service possible. Listen, I got in trouble years ago, okay? And one of the guys who arrested me years ago, his name's Frank, and he's a good friend of mine now. And I was at the gym working out with one night, and he was there, and he's like, Charles, and this was a few years back. He's like, doesn't it suck, man? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, listen, man, you're the biggest success story, like comeback story I know. He's like, I literally tell guys in the streets, like your story, trying to encourage them to get them to turn their lives around. And he goes, look at what you've accomplished in such a short period of time. Don't you wish you wouldn't have wasted so many years of your life? And I looked at him and I said, Frank, if I wouldn't have went through everything that I went through, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. And I said, like, it wasn't me messing up. I believe that, and it wasn't punishment by any means. It was preparation for what I needed to do. See, listen, I had to be addicted to opiates. I had to have the weight issues. I had to have all of the addictive personalities and mental health issues that I had. You know, I was diagnosed as being bipolar and having OCD, and I was clinically depressed and had anxiety and all of these different things. And it's like, but now I get to sit across from people that are still sick and suffering out there and look at them and be like, listen, like, I made it, and you can too. And it's coming from a genuine place. And like, listen, like, you know, I'm good at selling ketamine treatments, but not because I'm a salesman in that aspect. It's because I sit down on a non-hierarchical sense and give people hope and let them know if I made it, you can make it through it too. And see, and I love what you touched on is that the way we run our operation, it's not a hierarchical
I
operation
wanted to bring it back to that.
where it's like, I'm a healer, and this goes to that ego
And
place.
you have to do what
Yeah,
we tell you.
I'm gonna tell you what to do because I'm the healer, and I'm gonna fix you, and I'm gonna tell you how to fix yourself. See, everybody's on their own individual healing journey, and so like everybody needs to do what they need to do to heal
And
themselves.
we need to meet people where they're at.
Meet people where they're at, and hold space for people, and hold their hands through the process of their healing journey. See, listen, like when I speak to people and I'm trying to give them some advice, I don't give them advice like, hey, I'm giving you advice. I figure out what they're going through, and then I go back to a place in my life where I went through a similar thing, and I'm like, when I was going through a similar situation in my life, this is what I did to get myself through it. And I keep on giving suggestions like that so it's more digestible for people, because nobody wants to be told what to do. Then I say, like, you know, this worked for me, and, you know, maybe it could work for you too. And then people pick and choose what they want to listen to or take advice from. But like, I really feel strongly like that's how it's like we're led by people that have healed themselves. You know, like, listen, like, I really think that, like, in this industry, like, and I'm not saying the best in an egotistical way, but like the best healers are the people that have healed themselves, the people that have walked the walk so they can embody that frequency of what they've healed to. And then it's like an energetic attraction and communion where it's like, I've got myself to such a good vibrational frequency now, or a high vibrational frequency, that I keep my cup so full now that I can pour some of that energy into you and help you raise your vibration through walking through the flames. I think that all of the mission-driven people that are really in this for those genuine reasons are going to change the world. And, you know, and then when we are talking about like when you're talking to people that are thinking about they're investors or whatever and stuff like that, I'm like, we have a molecule that we can legally use right now that people are meeting God on. That are having conversations with God, or sitting with angels, or speaking with deceased relatives. And not to mention, it's doing neurological healing to the brain and increasing your natural dopamine levels, and literally expediting 20 years worth of therapy in 3 to 6 weeks, right? And like, if you took the name ketamine out of that equation and named it and did a rebrand or whatever, you told people all the positive things about that molecule.
And it's super safe.
And that it's so safe they give it to babies for surgery. Like, this sounds like the most amazing miracle drug on the planet.
But it's synthetic.
It's not only it's synthetic,
but it's not MDMA.
Yeah, it's synthetic, and it's a party drug, and that it's a horse tranquilizer,
Date rape,
all of these negative,
all of it,
and like
you kill cats with it.
But it's so safe that they use it on cats, because any other anesthetic would kill the cat. And so it's just like, I almost feel like there's been this, and like, I hate going down rabbit holes, but like, actually I don't, I like going down rabbit holes and peeking down sometimes. But the thing is that like, I feel like it was just this massive smear campaign, because we're talking about one of the safest, least toxic anesthetic on the planet. and it's literally one of the most villainized molecules out there.
Yeah. Well, and it's been around for 54 years, right? It's like how many other meds have been out there for that long, unlike ketamine. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we hear all those pieces. It's like, why? What's the long term? What long term is going to happen to me? And I tell people, I'm like, we use it. Yeah, we use it with babies. We use it with animals. We use it with C-sections when moms are having that, and it does. It crosses the placental barrier, but it quickly gets out, right? And people in the plant medicine world say, but it's not natural. And this is, when I came from a big conference this last weekend, I was trying to explain this. So ketamine is synthetic, yes. And it comes from angel dust, right? PCP.
Yep.
Angel dust, right? I'm like, okay, like, yeah, and we do. You like, you're with the angels, you talk to God, you can with ketamine.
Yeah.
But with ketamine specifically, yes, it's a synthetic molecule, but it's creating an organic process. And that is very, very different because a lot of people are seeing the synthetics and they're putting it into the SSRI, SNRI category. And that's not completely true at all. And nor should it be even close to the same category. Because when you're taking all these antidepressants, it's something you're taking daily to stimulate a process. Ketamine goes in, peaks at 40 minutes, and starts the brain's own organic process, right? And the brain starts fixing itself.
Yeah.
So we're using it from that standpoint. But, when people say, but it's not natural. I'm like, okay, do you want to, because natural's safe, right? Everybody is under this mindset that natural is safe. Natural is not always safe. Yeah. And the reason we have ketamine is because we use PCP. PCP had too many side effects from the hallucinogenic aspects. We took it back to the lab, and that's how little baby ketamine was born, because it has less side effects. That's exactly what we do with natural medicines because they're too toxic sometimes. And some, for society, natural is healthy. It's safe. It's natural. It's safe. Cocaine is natural. Coca, also opiates, right? Heroin, that's derived from natural. Digoxin is, it's a cardiac drug. It's one of the most potent cardiac drugs that's out there. That's natural. There's a lot of natural things that will kill you pretty darn quickly. So we've got to change the narrative that natural is safe. And we've got to look at, we need to respect both sides, right? Is it natural or is it synthetic? And I think what we see in the ketamine space is the body can heal itself. That's where the conversation needs to go. What is stimulating the body's natural process to heal itself? Yeah. And that's what society's missing right now from those standpoints.
Ketamine takes the active blocks away from people's own loving energy from within them, and it allows loving energy to flow within you. And so the thing is that we're in this constant state of dis-ease, which is translating into disease. And the body, once you reset the nervous system and you take all of these stressors and all of this stuff that a lot, because we are manifesting, whether it's positive or negative. And if we're in this negative place mentally, it's manifesting into our body. And so it's like, once we can actually, if we heal the mind up, the body tends to follow. And so that's why I think that ketamine is such a valuable tool also, is that this isn't just about mental health or even pain management. We've seen miraculous things happen with, what are they? Well, yeah, TBIs and stuff like that, but no, like autoimmune diseases and stuff like that. Yeah, yep. and it's just, and it's because there's so much more about treating the whole individual rather than just slapping a Band-Aid on something and alleviating the symptoms momentarily, but just treating the symptoms.
Doing a study too to see, because there is a paper out there that says that they found crystal of ketamine growing on the back of a fungus. So we're recreating that study to see if it actually came. Yeah.
So
from a natural compound.
Yeah.
Because then we can, but the thing is too, is synthetic or natural, let's talk about efficacy. Yeah. Okay. And let's talk about safety profiles. All right. That's what really matters. If we're taking something that, is incredibly safe and not toxic, and we're getting people off of harmful medications that they have to take on a daily basis, and even talking about benzodiazepines and things like that, it's if we can do 6 treatments or, 6 to 12 treatments on somebody and get them off medications that they have to take every day for the rest of their life, that's a win in the end of the day. And see, and it's so messed up because like I look at us like as like these like spiritual warriors where like we are on God's mission and we're doing these amazing things for the world. And isn't it so funny that like we're the villains in so many people's eyes too? It's like you guys are peddling drugs to people and like this is like crazy. And it's like, no, it's like we're giving people burning bush experiences and healing generational trauma, not even just decades worth of trauma, but like for me in my own personal life, like I had this thing where like, so like my grandmother's she was incredibly,
Tough on your mom.
educated and tough on my mom. She like went to Harvard and she was very, very accomplished. And like my mother, who went to MIT and is very accomplished as well in her own industry, like it was like this thing that was passed where it's like, my grandmother never told my mom she was proud of her, and then it was kind of like, even though I probably didn't deserve to be proud of for a lot of years of my life because I wasn't making very healthy choices. The thing is like I noticed it was kind of like the same thing with my mom and me. Not, and it wasn't anything malicious. It was just like it was just a generational thing. It was the program, right? Psychedelics ended that with me. Okay, because like so like now like our son's 5, but like I tell him I'm proud of him like 20 times a day,
Yes.
just for the most minuscule things. It doesn't take much. But the thing is that like I'm saying all of those positive, encouraging things with him. So like the cycle ends with me. And so like I think that that's how psychedelics are also going to change the world, where it's not just about mental health or anything like that, but like it's showing us where our generational like timeline throughout our family's history has fallen short, and then it ends that cycle. It's like it has the capabilities of doing that. And so it's like once you see this stuff and what it's actually capable of, it's like I don't believe this stuff is going to change the world. I know it's going to change the world. And if it's only ketamine that we have access to and we're already showing these amazing results, imagine what's going to happen when we do have access to all of these other compounds. It's going to completely change everything.
Yep.
I want to close the loop on safety and meeting people where they're at.
Go ahead.
And synthetic versus natural.
Mhm.
We can't when you're taking SSRIs, you can't do ayahuasca, you can't go do DMT, but you can go and do ketamine. So you're not requiring people to get off of their pharmaceuticals before they have this big breakthrough type experience.
Yeah.
The most medications we've ever got somebody off of was 11.
Yeah.
We got somebody off 11 different medications. We just got a Marine off 9 different medications. And we've like you've treated such a big different like age demographic. We've treated from 15 to 89 at our facility, and so it's just like this stuff is here and now,
beautiful.
and people don't have to suffer anymore. We actually have a very safe and efficacious compound out there that is going to completely change the game when people stop passing so much judgment on it from like every different direction.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, like, we really get to like earn our position in this business. But one thing, especially with you all, and I try to communicate this, but it's deaf ears still, right? With people sometimes. But I personally believe that ketamine needs to be the leader of the psychedelic space, not because it's the best molecule. You've got all the other substances, right? Ketamine's got the structure. And it's legal. It's an essential medication. Every country in the world has access to ketamine. We know how the clinics are to be run, and what you do is you push this agenda out with ketamine. And then as the psychedelics start coming, you just start plugging it in, right? Because you're not gonna be able to have a primary care who's like, oh yeah, let me do ayahuasca, let me do psilocybin. No, because your business structure is every 15 minutes. You've got to have a space and a viable model, right? We do need to have these revenue producing, because if they're not revenue producing, then the mission's going to end because, there's not enough resources in this space. So that's something, like we know this, right? And that's something in the psychedelic space. It's like, stop looking at ketamine like it's something negative just because you think it's ayahuasca or ibogaine or psilocybin. Stop. Ketamine is going to be your best friend because it's been approved by the FDA since 1970.
Right.
So use that drug, all the good, bad, ugly, use that as something that's already tried to build the will.
Yeah.
You
But
know,
we also have to weed out all the providers that don't know what they're doing and that just jumped on the ketamine bandwagon because they saw a quick ticket, a low hanging fruit to go make a couple $1,000 every,
yeah,
patient that they see.
When I was talking to like other like my VC friends and stuff like that, I'm like, listen, I go, only two molecules really make sense for me in the actual clinical setting. Okay. And like, and I mean, not completely, but in a way, because the thing is like when you are talking about actually having a revenue generating company and actually being able to turn those treatments, NNDMT, which lasts like 15 minutes, and then ketamine, which lasts 45 minutes to an hour. I mean, listen, I'm a huge fan of MDMA and psilocybin and things like that, but in a clinical setting, how many turns are you really going to be able to get? You got an 8-hour workday, or even if you're doing a 10-hour workday, and an MDMA session lasts for how many hours, and you need 2 therapists in the room, whatever the actual protocols that they were going to be using, like it's going to be very expensive. It's going to be very time consuming. You're never going to be able to turn the rooms, but ketamine, you can. And like, and the thing is too, is like, I love how everybody started trying to shift the let's take our eyes off ketamine and start talking about ibogaine thing, right? And for opiate addictions. And it's like we literally just got somebody that was actively on fentanyl when we started treating them off fentanyl, and he's completely sober now with ketamine. Still the same protocols. You're talking about like an 18-hour trip with ibogaine. Like there's no way that you're going to be able to really bring
That
that.
could kill you.
Well, yeah, but like it's besides,
the
like, you know, if
cardiotoxicity,
if it's done properly, can be safe and it can help a lot of people. But like that's more of like a retreat style setting or whatever. When you're talking about running actual clinic setups, I think ketamine is not only what is going to be the most effective molecule, but it also makes sense. And ketamine is the Trojan horse of this psychedelic revolution that's underway because it has been FDA approved for so many years. And so like I have guys that I'm friends with that are in law enforcement or first responders or military personnel that would never consider taking mushrooms or ayahuasca or anything like that. Those are drugs, okay? But then you tell them that, and they're not really, it's medicine, but that's what their opinion is, right? But then I tell them that I have an FDA approved anesthetic that's so safe they give it to babies and it can probably help them with their PTSD. And then all of a sudden they have this psycho-spiritual experience, which completely awakens this, you know, different outlook of life on them. And then all of a sudden they're like, wait a second, maybe I do want to talk about mushrooms or ayahuasca or something like that. Because if it's anything like this, and this just helped me so much, this is how we open up the conversations with people that might not be open to having conversations about other traditional psychedelic compounds.
And I think that's something that maybe we only hear and understand is like we're in the space. Ketamine, we have ketamine in the United States, right? So maybe we would get our language barriers taken down a little bit better if we were like, okay, how about this? You take ibogaine, I'll take ketamine, and let's open up a clinic in Florida. And let's figure out like what that looks like, right? Because, you know, when I make the policies and the protocols for the ketamine clinic for the state of Tennessee, and we have a clinic in Florida too, but you know, it's like you're looking at FDA, EPA, OSHA, state regs, federal regs, DEA, you know, all these different pieces, right? And you have to be able, when they come in, you better have an answer, period. You know, because it's, you know, it's my license on the line, you know, it's everybody, right? You know, and they could close it the same day if they wanted to. So that's where we're at, you know, with ketamine, we've been in that storm. And that's like with ibogaine, with the cardiotoxicity aspects, you know, people with ibogaine, they see the healing powers, but that's all they can see. They have not taken ibogaine yet and put it in, okay, what are the state regulations? How are we going to document this with the DEA? How are we going to monitor these people? What skill set do these people need to have? Like, do they need to be like cardiac anesthesia, right? Probably, you know, from that standpoint, you're going to have a cardiologist on board at the same time. Are you willing to pay a cardiologist $800,000 a year? You know, like where are you going to get the revenue from? So they're seeing it from here. It heals, but they're not seeing all these other things. And that's why you and I and Christina have gotten our tails kicked so much because not only are we seeing them, but it's like the fire with gas on it, and you're constantly having to address all of these different bullet points. And that again is why ketamine should kind of be the leader, because we can at least take ibogaine and put it in our little manual and start answering the questions that may arise from that, or ayahuasca or whatever else. But I was speaking to an FDA agent, and he was like, ibogaine's never going to get approved. It doesn't matter how efficacious it is. It's too dangerous from a cardio perspective, and they don't know why, and it sounds like it's going, I've not been around ibogaine, but it sounds like they're going into torsades. And, that's just, it's hyper excitability of the heart, right? And you could treat it with magnesium, but torsades, I mean, it's so consistently inconsistent. It's not like, oh, I noticed this waveform of the heart, I gave him magnesium and it went away. No, I've been in situations to where we've given magnesium, we've shocked them, we paced them, we did everything, and they were completely healthy. And it had nothing to do with ibogaine. It's just somebody went to torsades, right? And we didn't know how. We still don't have that power in healthcare system right now to control that electro instability of the heart. So that's why, with ibogaine, yeah, great drug. It's never going to pass. It's too dangerous. And meaning that the dangers, we don't have the solutions yet for that danger to address those in traditional healthcare. And ketamine is actually very, I don't know, I can talk about this a little bit with ketamine. So ketamine is cardioprotective to a point, right? You give somebody a lot of, I don't know if you've seen people strung out, maybe in your previous life, you saw them strung out on ketamine. They just kind of sit and stare, kind of like a zombie, and they're drooling a lot. Their heart rate will be like 200, and literally you could chop their leg off and they're just going to sit and stare ahead. So you can kind of tell when it's ketamine. But ketamine is so cardioprotective. So, it maintains your cardiac resistance. That's why people don't die on ketamine like they do on opiates. Opiates decrease your need for oxygen. It decreases your blood pressure, decreases your heart rate, right? So you see everybody just kind of like dropping down, and they're just fine with it while they're dying because they don't have this need, to actually breathe, or different pieces. But ketamine maintains cardiac, it maintains respiratory resistance. So if somebody, like one of the biggest cases, it's called tamponade, where our heart like functions normally, right? But when you get into tamponade, there's a fluid sac that gets around your heart, and the little heart, it can't, like, it's just so tight with the pressure around it. Only drug you can give somebody, and it's called a pericardial window, is the surgery that they have to have, and they go and they cut their chest open. But the only drug you can give someone for that anesthetic is ketamine. It's because ketamine maintains that cardiac resistance, so it's allowing the heart to pump up against this fluid until we can get that fluid off the heart. And if you don't get it off, they will die, So like looking at ibogaine and seeing the cardio, dangers of that, and then looking at ketamine and seeing how protective it is, you'll go into an ibogaine and a ketamine conversation, and you may lose. We may lose in the ketamine aspects, for God knows why. But that's something, that, maybe we make a manual, I don't know, with all these psychedelics, and be like, okay, here's the positives and here's the negatives. And I like to tell people that in the psychedelic space, especially, it's like, guys, you cannot look at just the benefits. And when I got my nursing degree, we looked at benefits, but we also considered the risks. When I got my anesthesia degree, we're just expected, the benefits, but you always give a drug based on risks. You do not give the drug for the benefits. So anytime an anesthesia provider is giving you a substance, we know every risk that could possibly happen. That's why I would not give it to you. I already know the baseline benefits as the drug, and that it's a completely different perspective, So if somebody's addicted, and, people do get cardiac dysfunction from addictions. Unfortunately, in today's society, we might be like, but ibogaine is going to make you, not be an addict anymore. And then you're going to be able to heal. And then your cardiac status is going to be able to heal better. And it's like, no, if their heart's too sick, do not give them the drug. And in the psychedelic space, sometimes people they just don't look at it that way. And that's the unfortunate piece sometimes.
Yeah.
So another thing I was thinking about, we were talking about our learning curves a little bit in the field, is I had an anesthesiologist one time, it really stuck in my head, but he said, death is the equal disruptor, or not disruptor. What is it? The ultimate equalizer. Death is the ultimate equalizer. And, I thought about that, and I was like, wow, he's right. Like, everybody's on the same level when they die. But you know what? No one's psychedelics. No, you're not. And the one thing that we do have, right, our entire life is ourselves. And it's like when we die at a different level of psychological growth. Or how do we die, right? Do we die at that same level that we came in life with, or do we die at a higher level of? And I think a lot of people in the psychedelic space, we see that evolution of ourselves. And as we all know, financially, that was probably a big target growing up. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to have a mansion. I'm going to do all this stuff. And now we've kind of shifted to, no, we're here to help people. And so I think psychedelics can help to evolve that. When we do die, it's like, where do we go? And I talk to people, that are suicidal a lot. And I ask them, I'm like, because I'm like, I understand, suicidality. A lot of times you think it's going to take you out of your situation. It's going to be better on the other side. And the grass is going to be greener. I was like, but who's to say you get stuck? Who's to say that you don't start this life over?
Yeah.
And you're intended to constantly evolve. I don't know, and it's like,
There
at
is
least
a theory that says, like, if you decide to do that and unalive yourself, that you just come back on the same timeline and you have to just do it over again until you learn that lesson and you heal.
Well, like,
there's a cycle.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that this is like, I think in a way, this is like spiritual boot camp. We're here to learn the lessons that we need to learn. And I have a feeling that in the way that the universe or this collective works, it's like, we're going to do it until we learn it. I love Alan Watts and his speech about the dream of life. And basically it's like, it's that we're all like a part of, like, the collective, that the one that we're all a part of it. And that this is like the dream of life, like God's dream. And that we're like experiencing the experience of life. Like God's living through me in a way. And he's living through Christina and you, and whether it, whatever people's interpretation or label of what they want to make God, I really feel like that this is what we're doing. Somebody told me this one time and it was really stuck with me. It's like, imagine if you were the creator of all. You were the creator of everything, and you made the best roller coaster ride in existence. The best roller coaster ride you could possibly imagine. And there was ups and downs and highs and lows and excitement and trials and tribulation. And it's like, and then you built this roller coaster. You go, you want to take a ride, wouldn't you? And so I think that's what we're doing. We're taking the ride.
Right. You're not wrong. Yeah. I had a friend tell me, and it really changed my perspective, because I'm a single mom with a 14-year-old, and she's amazing. Thank God. She's a blessing in disguise. But he told me, he said, stop looking for stability. Look at every day as an adventure. And, since I started doing that, like I accept and appreciate my life more. And it's blind faith. It's all blind faith.
Yeah. And psychedelics helped me with that, though. Because, like, listen, like, I was raised Catholic and I always wanted to believe, I did believe, but I've also been one of the seekers my whole life too, where it's like, kind of like, I got to see it to believe it kind of guy, even though it sounded really good to me. And like, that's what psychedelics did for me, was like, it took me from like a believer to a knower. Like my faith is like, I wouldn't call myself a religious person by any means, but on a spiritual level, like, I'm very, very in tune with my higher power or God. And that, like, I have my direction now. Like, I've found my purpose through psychedelics, and that, like, you can't waver me any direction from that. Like, I'm so set on it because I've seen the light at the end of the tunnel. I got the divine message that I needed to get. And so it's just like, I'm locked and loaded. When we were starting the company and we were having all of these spiritual jumping or hoops that we had to jump through and like getting our ass kicked, there was never any faith wavered. I knew
For
that-
you.
for me
Yeah.
and I say the hardest part of that part of the journey for me was trying to convince everybody else that this was all happening for a real reason. And so it's like, I'm like, this is God just molding us, and like just be
It's okay, Christina.
yeah
We got this.
yeah and but like, it's the truth though, because through every single one of those really, really hard times, when you're in the midst of it, you're like, why is this
Yeah.
happening to
How am
me?
I going to get through this?
And then you make it through. And then once you've made it through and you're down the road, you get put into a situation, and then you look back at that one situation and you're like, that's why I went through that, because I needed to go through that so I don't make that mistake right now. Or I leveled up and I learned the lesson that I needed to do so I can do it right this time. And so, Nick Stanstonato,
Or so you can laugh about it in
for
the
sure.
future.
He's got this saying. He's a motivational guy. Spoke with Tony Robbins, born with no legs, one arm, and I mean, he's a friend of mine. And he's just like, he's got this saying, and it's like, are you a victim or are you a victor? And it's like, I'm looking at the positive in everything, even though it's really hard sometimes to realize that this is leading me to a victorious place. And without all of those dark days and without all of those trials and tribulations, I wouldn't be evolving into who I need to be.
Let me tell you a funny story.
Please.
Talking about that. So in my psychedelic trip, when I walked with God forever, I was whining, I was like, I'm lonely. Like now I'm divorced, lost my mom, lost my brother, and I'm just whining, right? I'm all alone. And I'm over here like whining. And then like, God was like, how do you think you got to Greece? And I was like, what? Like, I was just, I was ready to like fight the world as I was crying to myself. And I was like, God was like, how do you think you got to Greece? I was like, what are you talking about? Like in my head at that time, I had never been to Greece. So in real life, not out of the psychedelic trip, I opened the ketamine clinic in February of 2018. And I got invited to speak at the European branch of the American Counseling Association in Athens, Greece. And that was like, I think it was either late 2018, early 2019 when I went to speak on ketamine. And talk about, I was the first medical provider they had invited in 62 years, actually ever, since the creation of the event or the EBACA. And I'm speaking to all these PhDs about ketamine. They thought I was nuts, right? Nobody knew what ketamine was. And here I am speaking at this university about ketamine. I have nothing else planned because, as you all know, you don't really have a lot of planning time when you're trying to change the world. You're just constantly executing things. Right. So I just show up. I'm in Greece for 10 days and we do day trips. Once I do the speech, then we set up some day trips. And one of those day trips was to Delphi. And, I didn't know what Delphi was. I looked it up a little bit. So that's what happened in real life. So in my psychedelic trip, I'm sitting there and God's like, how do you think you got to Greece? And I was like, what? God's like, do you think that was you or do you think that was me? And I was like, what? I was like, and God was like, I needed you to walk on Delphi. And I was like, who's Delphi? Like I'm like at this time, it's 2022. That was in 2018. I've had 20 years of life go by at about 4 or 5. And I was like, is Delphi a person? Like who's Delphi? I don't know who Delphi is. So when I got finished with my experience, like God and I, like we walked through Delphi, we talked about like love and acceptance and leadership and all this stuff. And it was, it was very insightful. But afterwards I was like, I have got to look up Delphi. Delphi has some type of significance. So I'm looking it up. And Delphi is, apparently it's where Zeus released like 2 eagles and they crossed, right? It's like the center of the universe. And it's where the oracles were actually in Delphi. And so I was like, okay, cool. Like God wanted me to go there. Well, then I'm at the ketamine clinic like 2 years later. I'm telling this lady, she's asking about psychedelics. I'm telling her about Delphi. And she's like, you just like quoted a chapter out of the Bible. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah. She's like, God or Jesus, I guess, walked on like some of the most negative energy spaces in the world because it was to counteract evil. And I was like, no, I don't need any more evil in my life. Like, I'm good. I've got it, And she's like, no, she's like, it's a positive thing. It means that God's on your side counteracting all this stuff. And I was like, okay, like, thank you. But it's interesting. So I always think about Delphi and they'll tell you it's like one of the most spiritual places like on the earth. And they'll talk about gods and goddesses and all these other things that I just, I don't know. But yeah, talking about what you're just mentioning with those different pieces, it's like, so in 2018, I randomly go speak to these people, complete loss of my thinking time, because these people have no idea what I'm speaking of. And then come to find out in 2022, it was actually, I was told this is why this happened 4 years ago, So yeah, it's all blind faith,
I love it.
Just got to keep showing up.
Oh my gosh. And that's easier said than done, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's that's you'd mentioned it earlier, and even when you were like when we were getting started, like we were in such a bad place with the clinic, because of, the lockdown and all of this kind of stuff, and us, we started the company by, I sold a Rolex that I had from, like, my mom gave me, and she took out a loan. Okay. And we rolled the dice and risked everything with our son. And,
Didn't pay ourselves for the
didn't
first
pay
2
ourselves
years.
for the first 2 years. Like, I remember one night we were out at, I was still eating burgers back then, I think, or no, I wasn't. It was like a vegan burger, something, I don't know. And I had $20 in my pocket,
Mhm.
and I was crying. And, like, she's sitting there and she's like holding Charlie, and I'm looking at her and I'm like, I know you got me, God. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm here, and, I know that this is all happening to me for my greatest good, but, like, this is a little bit scary right now, you know? And the thing is because, like, I knew that, and that was, like, one of the main drivers too, is, like, I was like, I can't ever quit, because if I do, not only will I lose everything, but I'll lose them. Listen, like, when going back to, like, how easy it to start one of these companies, I remember driving to work, like, in tears, like, going, I got this. I know you got me, God, even though I can't see any of it right now. And I know behind the scenes that you're just making everything the way it's supposed to be right now. And I was, like, telling myself that. But see, here's the thing is, like, I knew it was true, but boy, was it tough. And, like, but I had to try to keep it together as much as I could, because I was supposed to be the rock in this situation, where it's like,
Yeah, this was his idea.
I'm convincing everybody else that this is a divine message from God. And, like, I'm like, it was almost like a level of PTSD that I was acquiring
We'll
through.
do a psychedelic retreat together.
It's just like, ah. And so, like, but, like, it definitely is the best thing that I ever did now. Yeah, and not that we're rolling in any dough or anything by the means of it, because we're not. It's not like that. The fact is that we're helping so many people now. And, like, through, like, Christina and I started a nonprofit called the Warriors of Consciousness, and we haven't raised any money, but Christina and I have treated about 100 people for free so far, because we just want to help people. And so it's like, knowing that there's 100 people in here, they're out there right now up to this point that would have never been able to afford something like this or whatever, and now they have a completely different life because we took the leap of faith.
Yep.
And stuff like that, that's gratifying. That makes it all worth it. And knowing that I'm being a good example for my son now by doing this too, and, like, teaching him that aspect. It's so funny. Christina won't put, like, we were talking about it, and she's probably not going to post it on social media, but even though we want to, but, like, he's 5.
Oh,
and
that's a
you want
good
to tell
video.
it? She's like,
Such a cute video.
took a video of-
Charlie, he just started kindergarten, and he had a dentist appointment the other day, and so he was late for school, and I went to go get him a muffin before I sent him back. And he looks at me and he said, "Mommy, can you get me a job?" I'm like, "What do you want a job for? Go to school." And he was like, "No, I don't want to go do math." And I said, "Okay, you can come work at the clinic then." And he was like, "Okay, I'll fold the blankets and I'll give people medicine." And I was like, "No, you need to go to school to give people medicine. You can't give people medicine." He's like, "Okay, I'll fold the blankets and I'll go sell ketamine." I said, "Okay." I was like, "So how are you going to sell the ketamine?" And I was videotaping him, and he was like, "Psychedelic therapy?" And I was like, "No, but, like, what else are you going to say?" And he's like, Ketamine helps people." And I'm like, "Okay, what else are you going to say? That it's the best clinic in America?"
We were at this dinosaur exhibit, right? And it was on Father's Day, and Wink News shows up, right? And this was, like, probably last Father's Day,
Yeah,
right?
this past Father's Day.
And the lady comes up, and she was like, well, I walked up to her because, like, I think of things as, like, this is an opportunity. Hey, here's my card. If you
Sure
ever
was
want
an
to talk,
opportunity.
if you want to talk about psychedelic therapy ever, or how we're helping veterans, I'd love to talk to you about it. And she's like, okay, and took my card. She's like, do you want to do an interview real quick right now about Father's Day? And I was like, yeah, sure. And she's like, well, grab your son. And so I'm holding him up like this. And she's like, so tell me, what are you guys doing here today? And he goes, we're going to do ketamine.
That's awesome.
And I was like, no, we're not. And so basically it was like, no, 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 daddy and mommy have a ketamine clinic that helps people heal and stuff like that. And then we were out at dinner. It's like he's getting programmed a certain kind of way because we were out at dinner the
He
other
just
night.
overhears us talking.
Yeah.
You know, it's
And-
not like we're
but-
talking to him, but
No.
he hears all the calls that we're on.
And he doesn't even know what he's talking about. But like we were at dinner the other night.
He does. He
and-
said, "Myself Wellness is the best clinic in America."
Yeah.
Okay? He knows.
He said we were at dinner and there's a guy who's very prominent in our town and we were eating at his restaurant and he walked into the place and like it's he's in politics and stuff like that. Everybody knows who he is. And he walks up to the table and I'm talking to him and Charlie looks at Christina right in front of the guy and he goes, "What kind of psychedelics does he do?" And I'm just like, no, no.
I'm so terrified I'm going to get a phone call from school being like, "Oh, he said cannabis the other day."
Yeah.
And that they're just going to be like, "Your son just keeps talking about illegal drugs. Like, what are you doing at home?" You're just waiting for the phone call.
Yeah.
No, but he knows we help people at the clinic and it's like, and that's a beautiful thing because like, he knows that mommy and daddy go to work and we help people heal and stuff like that. And like, that's the way
That's the message.
That's the message. That's what
Yeah.
I want my son to be seeing is that like, doing good things for good people.
And I think that's a piece of parenting too, right? Because my daughter, when I was doing anesthesia, I never got to pick her up or drop her off to school because I was, early and late at the hospital. And she was like, she really had this like core belief that I didn't love her because of me not dropping her off and picking her up, which never happened, right? My parents never took me to school or picked me up. And, but this was very important to her. So that's, that was one reason why I went to start the clinic was to do part-time at the hospital and then at the clinic. And then I lost my job because they wanted me to choose clinic or the hospital. So I chose the clinic. And, but that was 8 when I started the clinic. Now she's 14. And I have never, right? She has seen my struggles. She's told me I look like death. She told me I look like a research subject. Like she tells me all the things, keeps me very, very humble because she's right. I mean, she sees the best and the worst of me. And, but it's so amazing because like she wanted to be, I don't know, bird stuff and all these different things. But now she wants to go get her MBA. Now she is in a club at school. It's an entrepreneurial club. So it's interesting to see, even though she sees me good, bad, ugly, whatever, like she's evolving into this role because, it's worthwhile to her, even though I do miss things, I am gone, all these different pieces. So it's neat to kind of see what they're attracted to because they feel oriented, to the mission. And that's something with her. Like, she's like, no, this is a team. Like we need to do this, and it's more on a seeing that there is a higher power. There is a bigger, it's more than just about me or you. It's about all of us coming together. And so it's neat to see it from a parental aspect.
Yeah.
So if you had one thing of motivation, what would you tell yourself when you first started this back in 2020 that you wished you would have really learned and knew back then based on your learning lessons in life?
It's going to be okay.
That's
Just
good.
keep going.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Because you're going to help a lot of people.
That's always go back to your breath.
Okay, Dr. Ferber.
Always go back to your breath and it's going to be okay. Because
It's going to be okay.
it was definitely it's been one heck of a roller coaster ride,
Yeah.
you know.
And I think mine is knowing that good always wins. Because you see it. You see the bad. You see the bad patients. You see the bad players. You see the bad investors. You see the bad providers. And a lot of people get stuck on the world's too evil. But then I see all these amazing people, right? Leaders coming together, sacrificing so much. It's like, no, the good's going to win.
Yeah.
It's just going to take us all to come together to do that and to see that this mission is bigger than any of us. It's going to take
Yes.
each of us executing accordingly in order to make it to grow.
We're all those droplets that we talked about
That's
in
right.
that ocean of consciousness.
No droplet's bigger than the other.
There you go.
Well, thank you guys so much for being on this. Hopefully we can
Thank
do this
you.
again in the future.
For sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.